Hey folks, hope everyone out there is doing well. I'm coming on a bit early to bring in another perspective on the awakening path. It's someone that I mentioned last night in my video, and I was reading today and I found a very interesting passage that I feel deeply relates to the content of last night. It's from the book I Am That by Nisargadatta Maharaj. And it's talking about loving others. And at the end here, I'll read again the passages from last night. But I wanted to share this short paragraph with you on loving others. It's number 46, and it's called Awareness of Being is Bliss. It's page 209 in the book. Do not pretend that you love others as yourself, unless you have realized them as one with yourself. You cannot love them. Do not pretend to be what you are not. Don't refuse to be what you are. Your love of others is the result of self-knowledge, not its cause. Without self-realization, no virtue is genuine. When you know beyond all doubting that the same life flows through all that is, and you are that life, you will love all naturally and spontaneously. When you realize the depth and fullness of your love of yourself, you know that every living being and the entire universe are included in your affection. But when you look at anything as separate from you, you cannot love it, for you are afraid of it. Alienation causes fear, and fear deepens alienation. It is a vicious cycle. Only self-realization can break it. Go for it resolutely and restlessly. So maybe I'll read the passages from last night too now. Page 93 in Avodat Hashem Spiritual Work. Anyone who wants to progress spiritually needs to know that we cannot get anywhere without, quote, love your friend as yourself. This is where spiritual development begins, and this is the springboard towards becoming connected to God. The next passage, when we attain the state of truly loving others, we are raised up to a spiritual and eternal level of existence, are free from the emptiness of materialism, and our life takes on great importance. If we understand this, we are motivated to work towards this. And the last passage, working to truly love others and attaching ourselves to this idea creates an energy that unifies humanity. So two perspectives, completely different parts of the world, one from India, one from Israel, one in the Eastern non-dual tradition and one in the Jewish Kabbalistic tradition. And they're saying very, very similar things. A little bit of difference in terms of Nisargadatta says, do not pretend that you love others as yourself. Right? And this is saying to kind of work on that intentionally, to try and love others as yourself. And, you know, it's a different path, but according to Nisargadatta, right? Don't pretend that you love others as yourself. Unless you have realized them as one with you, you cannot love them, right? Unless you have realized them as one with you, you cannot truly love them. Because this is what we were talking about last night, is that to love another, to love your friend as yourself, means to transcend, to move through separate self-consciousness. When you think of yourself as this separate being and another as a different, completely different separate being, it's more challenging to love them in this spiritual way. But when we see them as extensions of ourselves, as parts of ourselves, then it's easy to love them, because you're easy to love yourself. You're loving yourself. Just two sentences before, Nisargadatta says, since time immemorial, you loved yourself. So this love of ourselves comes naturally, and especially when we open to our true identity. So as Rav Ashlag says, to love your friend as yourself, this is where the spiritual development begins, and this is the springboard towards becoming connected to God. So it's kind of a different angle on where to put your intention. Nisargadatta has a very, very unique style of teaching that is very hard to resonate with most people. The Rav Ashlag is a little bit more friendly to the common person. But I just love how Nisargadatta says, your love of others is a result of self-knowledge, right? Through knowing your true identity, right? Without self-realization, no virtue is genuine, meaning it's performative, right? It is effortful, right? It is coming through this more the Rav Ashlag energy of try, work hard at it, work to love others as yourself. And this is saying it won't be genuine unless it comes through self-realization. And as Nisargadatta says, when you know beyond all doubting that the same life flows through all that is, and that you are that life, right? So your identity, you are that life. And the same life flows through all that is. And I would say that sentiment is very in alignment with the Rav Ashlag teachings. So, and you are that life. When you realize that, you will love all naturally and spontaneously. When you realize the depth and fullness of your love for yourself as being life, you know that every living being in the entire universe are included in your affection. But when you look at anything as separate from you, you cannot love it, for you are afraid of it, right? So here, again, when you see life or anything in life as separate from you, you can't truly love it because you're afraid of it. I don't know about that exact aspect of you are afraid of it, but it is foreign to you. It is different from you. And it can get to a place of being afraid of it. And alienation causes fear, and fear deepens alienation, as Nisargadatta says. It's a vicious cycle. So what's happening right now in our world is really a crisis in identity. Just take that in. It's a crisis in identity. We're so identified as these separate selves, as these separate beings, which again, there's truth to that. We are separate bodies, we have separate lives, we have to provide for our bodies and for our families. Yes, we are separate in that surface level experience of life. But really, when you go deeper to the core, the spiritual work here is about a revolution in identity. It's about honing in on our true identity. our true identity as that of life or creation. And right now in our culture, there's this movement, especially in the West, around I identify as, right? I identify as, and I just feel like it's the soul's way of trying to get to the truth, but through a convoluted means, or through a means that is more shrouded in gender politics rather than in world-centric politics or cosmocentric politics. Meaning that when I feel into it, what I'm working towards, and I feel like people on the spiritual path are working towards, is to say, I identify as creation. I identify as life. And when that becomes my identity, and I talked about that last night, like, how old are you? Right? When you recognize that your age is not the age of your body, but that you are creation, and thus your age is the age of creation. Your birth was the birth of creation. And I know that could sound like far-fetched and like way too esoteric or mystical, or, you know, not realistic. But the truth is that that is our identity. That is how old we are. Your body didn't just come at the beginning of time. Your body was born into an unfolding of time, an unfolding of evolution. Your cells and everything inside of you came from somewhere else. It came through an entire process of creation up until this very moment. So we are truly ancient beings. And it's not to get egocentric about it, because then it would defeat the purpose and defeat the point. But it's to really, like, in a humble way, tune in to your true being and your true age and your true identity as creation or as life, right? As he says, when you realize the depth and fullness of your love of yourself, you know that every living being and the entire universe are included in your affection. When you know beyond all doubting that the same life flows through all that is, and you are that life, you are that life, you will love all naturally and spontaneously. And as the Rav said, working on to truly love others and attaching ourselves to this idea creates an energy that unifies humanity. So this is the work. Like, when I see all these people out there being activists, and like they're trying to create change, and it's beautiful, and I applaud people who are dedicated to creating change in the world. But when I look on a deeper and deeper level, I see that really they're also caught up in the matrix, and really many times they're not actually serving true change and transformation in the world. I'm not putting them down in any way. I want to be clear about that. I applaud people who are working hard to create change. And sometimes that is actually part of the game. It's caught up in the illusion. If we go to the core and we work to transform our own self and our own nature, to recognize our true identity, that I identify as a life, I identify as creation, and that I love myself because of that, as that, then spontaneously and naturally I love others. And if there's anything that's going to transform consciousness, it's love. Like I think we all know that deep down. We all know that. So through doing this work of transforming our own identity to be the identity of life and creation, divine creation, sacred life, then we so naturally love others, and we so naturally change the vibration of consciousness. And that changes culture, and that culture changes politics, and politics changes laws and global interactions and transactions. So I just thought it's so beautiful to bring these two teachings together and to really contemplate. We also said like that thought last night. The spiritual world is built on thoughts and feelings. Therefore, our spiritual states fluctuate in relation to our thoughts and feelings. So we build spiritual worlds based upon our thoughts and feelings. So the more that we're contemplating our true nature as being life, our true nature as being creation, we're building that spiritual world in ourselves and around us. And that is transforming consciousness. It's bringing healing and awakening to the world. And it is the deepest form of activism, spiritual activism, and service of the divine, service of God that you could possibly do. So really, maybe taking some time to contemplate this, look in the mirror. There's a spiritual practice of looking in the mirror and just really gently seeing yourself, removing mask after mask after mask, and seeing down to the core that you are creation, that you are life, and that is your deepest, truest identity. And then, it goes beyond that, right? It goes beyond to you are the divine, you are the cosmos. But there's a sort of a starting point of being our identity as that of being life and that of being creation. And just feeling that, and then feeling how your consciousness shifts as you tune into that. And you imagine living as life, and you imagine living as creation, and seeing others as life and creation. It's quite radical. It's quite radical in our world because we're so self-centered. We're so consumed with our identities, and our identities become the center of our lives and how we relate to the world. That's why so much of the Eastern teachings talk about ego, and ego being the barrier to awakening, to self-realization. It's because we're identified as this individual who has lived however many years our body has been here. But when we connect to our true identity as life and creation, it completely expands our sense of self, and it completely expands our consciousness. And we start to act and behave much, much differently. And when it becomes an actual realization, as Nisargadatta said, then we love spontaneously and naturally. Love others in a pure spiritual way, spontaneously and naturally. And as the Rav says, work on it, right? No, don't just wait for realization or, but actually even pretend, right? And as Nisargadatta says, don't pretend. I think Rav Ashlag would say, pretend, work on it. That is what Amunah is. Amunah, embodied faith, is living as if you were realized, right? Living as if you were realized. So what would it be like to be realized? Like Nisargadatta is talking about, live as that now. That is Amunah, that's embodied faith. So I leave you with that, and I hope it's helpful. If you have any questions, pop them in the comments, and I'll be back again tonight with more passages from Avodat Hashem.